Portions of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest in precious metals than now. So go to legacypminvestments.com for your free investing guide, legacypminvestments.com. Our intelligence agencies may be pressuring private companies when it comes to the censorship of information.
And basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert.
Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I'm Trish. Good to have you here. Reminder, make sure that you subscribe to the full audio version of this podcast on Apple iTunes or on Spotify. This is really pretty disturbing in that we as a society have prided ourselves on our First Amendment, which would prevent, of course, our government from interfering with our freedom of speech. This is all coming to light because of an interview on Joe Rogan's podcast in which Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, said, and I actually can't believe he said this. He was very, very forthcoming. I'm not entirely sure why, because I think this actually lands him in a whole bunch more trouble.
Our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful.
I mean, this is bonkers, because what it tells me is somehow there was some effort by our government to tell a company what they should be publishing and not publishing. Now, again, you might say, private company, if they want to listen to people in the government, they want to make those decisions, like, that's up to them. Well, one, the government can't be telling them what we as individuals, right, can publish or not publish. So let's go back to the freedoms that these internet companies have, these social media companies have. They are not to be held liable, right? So if I publish something and it's just flat out wrong and I knew it was wrong, I can get sued. But Facebook cannot. That's the way the whole Section 230 worked. So now we've got a situation where these social media companies are actually acting like the news organizations themselves. They're acting like they might be possibly sued, but they can't. Don't forget, they can't. And then you have to say, well, is this because of pressure from the U.S. government? I think, again, in some ways, what Twitter did was actually more transparent. Twitter said, you know what, we've been told this is disinformation and we're just going to take it down and you're shut off, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's bad, right? But at least they're not sort of gaslighting people, making you think, you're just being suppressed. And so you never knew. Like, I still don't know what story can get through, what story can't, because there's algorithms in place that prevent certain things from being seen. Let me just go back to my belief in our basic freedom of speech. And that's that we should be able to see everything. And I shouldn't have Facebook repressing, suppressing, whatever you want to call it, any story that I put out to my audience any more than anybody else should. I mean, that is just not right. And especially when it happens to be the government that's telling them, hey, be on the lookout for this. We got a problem. It shouldn't be legal, frankly, in any way, shape, or form for them to decide that a particular story for its editorial reasons is not allowed to be out. Or they should just own up to the fact that they're a publisher, right? That all the publishers are kind of working for Facebook and Twitter and all these social media companies where people are trying to get their content out. I mean, that's just sort of the reality of it now. This has gotten so far away from our lawmakers because, well, I don't think they understand it. I mean, let's kind of be honest, right? Like, none of these people actually, they're all kind of up there in age. They probably don't even use social media themselves. And so I think it's gotten away from them. They don't really understand what's at stake. And the tech companies are smart. You know, they're running like 5 steps ahead, trying to come up with new sophisticated ways to get around the rules. So this is a pretty nutty thing to have just gone down, and it really makes you question what kind of collusion really is going on. I mean, this is the slippery slope that people worry about, where you effectively just become Russia, because if the government has say over what we're seeing, what we're allowed to see, and we don't really know because it's just being suppressed, then we are not the democracy and sort of beacon of truth and freedom and transparency that we thought we were. Quick shout out for my friends over at amac.us/Regan, because it's an organization that cares about this stuff as much as I do. I mean, they're really fighting every day for our freedom of speech. Love them. I love what they're doing. They are in Washington fighting for your freedom and my freedom, and they're all over the country in all kinds of localities as well, looking out for all the issues that I know matter to you as an American. amac.us/Regan. It's a little like, think about it as like AARP, except for conservatives. So you can get lots of good information in terms of retirement plans, in terms of healthcare, et cetera, and lots of discounts, cell phone plan discounts, and hotels and restaurants, all that kind of thing. $16 a year. You join forces with 2.4 million Americans, like-minded Americans that care so much about our freedoms. Association of Mature American Citizens, amac.us/my last name, Regan, amac.us/Regan. Go there today. Sign up or renew for the year. It's important. It's important in light of all these things that are happening. I mean, right? You can't say it's a recession. Apparently, a man can have a baby. You go on. And then we learn this. I just cannot believe that it's come to this and nobody's stepped in and interfered. You know, before I've talked about a monopoly, and that may not be the most perfect analogy, but what has happened is the companies that are effectively controlling the roads, right? The roads of information, they're now also controlling the information. And that's a big problem, because that fundamentally just doesn't gel with who we are as a nation. So I think this story is going to have a few more chapters. I think there's a lot more that we're going to need to learn, and I'd be on the lookout for it. Tomorrow we'll get a little bit more into the Mar-a-Lago stuff. I mean, I would just say my one question in all of this is, how did any of this classified material get out of the White House to begin with? I mean, where was the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the Secret Service? Where are all the teams that are supposed to be watching this information? Think whatever you want about Donald Trump. Let's put him off in a corner right here. And let me just ask you, how does that happen? I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling, because what it tells you is that there was a real failure of the system overall. In other words, he didn't go and take these off the right. Somebody did, and other people allowed it. So how did that happen? Why did that happen? And what does that say about the security of our nation? I'll see you tomorrow.